What do Ben Franklin, Isaac Newton, Johann Sebastian Bach, Samuel Johnson, and Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart all have in common? They were all born to older parents. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about parenting after age 35. And I think it's kind of an important topic because it's becoming more and more common for whatever reasons. There's a variety of reasons, actually. But it's becoming increasingly more common for people to delay parenting. Sometimes they want to get established in their career, or they want to get established financially, or maybe just personal reasons. But since it is becoming more common, I thought it might be helpful to touch upon that topic. Personally, I became a mom after 35, and I was also born to older parents, so I've experienced it from both sides of the question. So I just wanted to share some observations and give you something to think about if you are perhaps considering this. So just like many things in life, there are advantages and disadvantages to this type of situation. So first off, let's take a look at some of the advantages. So what kind of advantages might there be for parenting after 35? Well, first off, if you're over 35, you've probably been around the block a few times, so you've got more life experience. And so I think that helps you in parenting because by virtue of having more life experience, you tend to be older, but also wiser and have more patience. And I think anyone who has dealt with kids at any time will readily agree that having patience, especially with dealing with kids, with rearing children, having patience is a positive thing. And because you have that experience, you're older, and that I think it tends to lend to a calmer and more thoughtful style of parenting. And so I think that's a net benefit. Another aspect of parenting after 35 is since you're a little later in life compared to in your 20s, you're more likely to be established in your career. You're more likely to have a greater financial stability, more savings, and that type of stuff. So I think that's also a net benefit because, let's face it, if you are more established in your career and you have more finances, then that allows you to have more security for your family. And I think that is something that is very helpful for kids. Kids need security in all aspects, not only in relationships, but for that whole household. So I think that's definitely an advantage over someone in their 20s having kids. Another thing about parenting after age 35 is, again, because of the life experience, it's much easier for you to have a long-term perspective on things, so you're less likely to follow fads and trends. You probably have, by the time you're after 35, you probably have given it quite a bit of thought about, how you want to raise your kids and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you're going to be less likely to be swayed by the winds of fads and changes and trends and all that kind of stuff. And I think also you're probably going to be more likely to prioritize meaningful experiences. So you can kind of plan out the things that you want to provide for your children, the not only material possessions, but like I said, experiences, vacations, camps. You can offer more guidance while they're growing up. Another thing that you might not think about, but I believe is an advantage, is when you have kids as an older parent, I think that in a sense it helps to keep you more youthful, gives you a more youthful mindset, because face it, if you're going to have little kids running around the house, you have to be able to keep up with them. So that kind of naturally makes you more active than you might otherwise if you had older kids at that same stage. So yeah, I really believe that having kids helps you feel and act younger. Yeah. So I think especially after age 35, you take that as a compliment. Also, because you're kind of out of sync with those that are having children in their 20s, it kind of helps you kind of hook up and kind of go along with a younger generation. So that's another way that it kind of helps you maintain a more youthful mindset. And let's see, another advantage is that as older parents, again, you've got that life experience, so you're more prepared, I believe, for the challenges of child rearing. And no matter how old you are, actually, when you have kids, you're going to face challenges in rearing children. So I think the older parents have an edge there because they are kind of more prepared for some of the things that might arise. So, what are some of the challenges? I prefer to think of it as a challenge rather than a disadvantage. So, yeah. So, what are some of the challenges with parenting after age 35? Well, probably one of the greatest challenges is there's a lot more health issues potentially. Not necessarily a given, but you have to be aware of that you're at increased risk for a lot more health concerns. Because technically, if you talk to an obstetrician or, a doctor that is dealing with pregnancy like that, the technical definition of a geriatric pregnancy is a pregnancy in which the mother is 35 or older on the baby's due date. Usually we think of geriatrics as being in their 80s or whatever, but that's not what this means. It just means that a geriatric pregnancy is one where you've got an older mother, older than 35. So geriatric pregnancies face special health concerns. Namely, there is an increased risk of a number of different complications. Common complications is older mothers are more likely to have gestational diabetes. So because of the change in the hormones due to pregnancy and all that, that can affect the control of blood sugars. So gestational diabetes means that as a result of pregnancy, you develop diabetic condition. So you probably would have to watch your diet, maintain I had actually gestational diabetes, and I was able to control it through diet. So you have to watch what you're eating and monitor your blood sugars and all that. So that is a concern for older mothers. Other issues for older mothers is you have an increased risk of preeclampsia, which is hypertension during pregnancy, high blood pressure during pregnancy. And so that would have to be monitored, and you have to take care of that or keep an eye on that. Other things, there is an increased risk of premature birth. There is an increased risk of low birth weight. There's an increased risk of having to or needing a C-section. There's an increased risk of miscarriages. So one of the stats that I found was like at age 35, there's a 20% risk. I'm not sure, I'll have to look this up, but there's whether it's an increased risk or a 20% chance in all. But anyways, I'll look it up and put it in the comments, or I'll put a note in it. But there's an increased risk of miscarriage, and that risk grows as you get older. There is an increased risk of stillbirths. There's an increased risk of placenta previa, where when it gets time for the baby to be delivered, the placenta gets in the way, kind of blocking stuff. And that's actually 3 times more likely in your 40s compared to in your 20s. So, yeah, there's a whole host of potential, and we should stress this, that it's potential. Doesn't mean for sure that you're going to get it, but potentially you could face some of these concerns. So if you are planning on having a child later in life, you definitely want to be in better health. That will help mitigate some of these issues, but also you have to be diligent about, getting prenatal care and keeping an eye on your conditions, keeping an eye on your weight so that you don't gain too much weight as you might with gestational diabetes or other things. There are other health concerns. As a woman gets older, there is a decreased fertility because the eggs decrease not only in quantity, but also in quality. So it's going to be harder to get pregnant when you're older like that. Also, there is a higher risk of Down syndrome and other genetic conditions or chromosomal abnormalities. And just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, at age 25, there is a 1 in 1,250 chance of having a baby with Down syndrome. 10 years later, age 35, there's a 1 in 400 chance of having a baby with Down syndrome. And then 10 years later, again, at age 45, now there's a 1 in 30 chance of having a baby with Down syndrome. So again, it has to do with Down syndrome. That's a genetic condition, and that could be, I think it's probably related to the quality of the eggs, because when a girl is born, she has all the eggs that she's going to have for the whole lifetime. So the older she is, the older her eggs are too, that kind of thing. Another issue, and depending on how you look at it, it may be a disadvantage, but others may view it as an advantage. But when you're older, you have a greater likelihood of multiple births, having twins or triplets, or that kind of thing. And it has to do with, again, a lot of it's related to hormones, but basically, the older you are, the more likely you are to have multiple eggs released instead of just one or something like that. So yeah, you could be more likely to have twins, triplets, that kind of thing. Okay, other issues or other challenges is there's a societal bias against older parents. naturally we tend to think of parents as being younger in their 20s or maybe early 30s, for example. So society is generally geared towards younger parents. So you want to be aware of that. So in a sense, you're going to be fighting the tide or fighting societal expectations, that kind of stuff. So you might feel a little more isolated, but if you have a good support group, you can overcome that. But it's just something that you should be aware of. Other issues regarding older parenting is there's concerns about aging. And what I mean is, here you are, you're in your 40s or maybe 50s and you have young children. So the thing is, you may be starting to face senior health issues while your children are yet young. So it could be something simple as, maybe you're having trouble keeping up with your kids or that kind of stuff, or it could be something more serious. Again, especially if you're going to have if you're going to have kids when you're older, you want to make sure that you do everything you can to maintain your health. If not for yourself, at least for the sake of your children. So that's something to consider. Another thing to consider is that when your kids are in their late teens or perhaps in the early 20s, they are probably going to be different from their peers in that they're going to be dealing with parental aging issues a lot sooner than their peers. So if you have a baby at, say, 40, by the time that child turns 18, you're going to be pushing, 60. So he's going to have to start, your kid's going to have to start thinking about, okay, what about mom and dad? They're going to retire soon, that kind of stuff. And again, it's not necessarily that it's a disadvantage, but it is definitely something you have to consider. It's something that can be a challenge and something that you should be aware of. And the last challenge that I want to consider here is one that I've encountered myself. It's kind of related to the societal bias kind of thing, but there's a lot of misconceptions and it can potentially be kind of awkward. So what I mean by that is like you can have an older woman with a younger child at the store, and a lot of people will assume that the woman is the child's grandma, when in reality it's the mom. So I've heard that growing up. I'd have, some other kids see me with my mom and they say, "Oh, is that your grandma?" I'm like, "No, that's my mom." So that kind of thing. It's kind of awkward. But if you're aware of it, you can kind of prepare for that. And again, I think society has changed in that there's a greater emphasis on health in that. So maybe people are less likely to automatically assume that someone older is going to be, the kid's grandma instead of the mom. But yeah, it can be a little awkward if you're not ready for it. Okay, next I thought I would just take a quick look at some historical figures of people, well-known individuals, who were born to older parents. If you remember your Sunday school, you may have heard about the story of Isaac. Isaac was born to Abraham and Sarah, and Abraham was almost 100 years old. Sarah was 90, so that definitely qualifies as older parents. Also, the story of John the Baptist. John the Baptist was born to older parents as well. So there's those two. And some more historical figures. Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin was born to older parents. His father, Josiah Franklin, was 51 when he was born, and his mother, Abiah Folger, was 40 when Ben was born. Isaac Newton, the well-known English scientist, you know, the thing about the apple falling from the tree and he discovered gravity? Not really, but, you know, he formulated Newton's laws of motions and he formulated a lot of what we call now classical physics. Anyways, Isaac Newton. His father, Isaac Newton, was 36. I think he actually died before Newton was born, but the thing is he was older. In the time frame when Isaac was coming along. His mother, Hannah, I don't know how you pronounce this, Eiskopf, I'll have to look it up, but Isaac Newton's mother was 37 when Isaac was born. Johann Sebastian Bach, well-known Baroque composer. His father, Johann Ambrosius Bach, was 40 when J.S. Bach was born. And his mother, Maria Elizabeth Lemmerhirt, was 41 when Johann was born. Samuel Johnson, he's considered the father of the English dictionary. He was the first one to put together, I believe, the dictionary in the English language. And when he put together the dictionary, that did a lot to standardize the spelling of English. Anyways, Samuel Johnson, his father, Michael Johnson, was 52 when he was born, and his mother, Sarah Ford, was 40. And then we'll wrap up this section with another musician, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, child prodigy. His father, Leopold Mozart, was 37 when he was born, and then his mother, Anna Maria Pertl, was 36 when Wolfgang was born. So you can tell from these historical figures that, in a sense, it's nothing new. People started having kids young, but they didn't stop after, age 30. Some of them kept on going. So if they did it, you can do it too. Okay, so how can you handle, or what are some tips for navigating parenthood after 35? I've kind of already touched on this before, but the number one thing that you can do is take care of your health. Prioritize your health. The better off you are, the better shape you are in, the healthier you are, the easier your pregnancy will be. You will probably avoid a lot of complications, potential complications, if you are in better health. And not just during pregnancy, but post-pregnancy, until your kids are grown and even beyond. It will be much easier if you take care of yourself. So eat right, avoid processed foods. get your exercise in. And exercise doesn't mean you have to go to the gym and work out, 12 hours a day or anything like that. Do more walking. That'll also help you to enjoy your life with your kids. You can go camping, you can go hiking and go bike riding, all the stuff that, all those things that will make memories with your kids. The better health you are in, the more likely you can do that and the better it will be. So that's probably the number one advice. Take care of your health. Then there's some other things related to like perhaps emotional support. As I mentioned, it can be sometimes awkward being an older parent with younger children. So if you can seek out some supportive communities, that will help. I'm sure there's probably, Facebook groups or that kind of stuff that are geared towards older parents, that kind of thing. As an older parent, you're going to have a unique perspective. So embrace that. Don't be afraid of it. Don't shun it, but just say, this is me. And I think if you have that unique perspective, then in a sense, that's a gift that you can give to your children too. And I think also that because you are older, you can help your children, or you can raise your children to be more helpful and more respectful and appreciate older generations. So I think especially with a lot of society, kids tend to group around with kids, and they see anybody over 20 as being old. But I think when you're an older parent with younger children, you can help them to be comfortable with all generations, not only the very young, but also the very old. So it's really kind of more natural. So they kind of have a more balanced view instead of just focusing on a narrow age group. So I think that's definitely a plus. I could have put that in the advantages section. But yeah, that's a gift you can give to your children. And if you're thinking about having kids at an older age, you want to be aware of that you're going to run into assumptions and biases. So you can at least, give it some thought. So when those situations do arise, you can handle them wisely and graciously instead of, getting flustered or flying off the handle, that kind of thing. I mean, it looks nice enough, right? It looks kind of pretty. The sun shining through the trees and on the path and shady glen and all that, but you have no idea how hot and humid it is here. And then there's other fun stuff like snakes and ticks and fire ants and God knows what else. Other kinds of creepy crawlers are here to attack you. So you just have to be on guard. And the last thing I would say is, I know these are kind of general ideas, but at least it gives you something to consider. But you want to plan for the future, not only with your health and taking care of your health, but also your finances. And you want to raise your kids so they can, be a benefit to society, and it will help you in your old age too. So ideally also you would be saving not only for your retirement, but saving up for your kids as well. But definitely plan for the future. So parenting is a journey, regardless of your age, whether you start having kids when you're 20s, or you start when you're 30s, or you start when you're 40s. It's a journey, and it's a challenge at any age. So your journey is going to be unique. So embrace the joys, embrace the journey, and you'll find that there are going to be immense rewards, because children are a blessing. And just because you're older or whatever, you don't want to shy away from it. Don't be afraid. Some people might say, well, what about this? I don't have enough money saved up. Don't worry about that too much. Things will work out. You can make it work out. But don't be afraid to have children, because they are an incredible blessing that you simply cannot imagine. And that's what I want to leave you with. Children are a blessing, and embrace that. So, what are your thoughts? Please share your thoughts, questions, or comments in the section below, and I will read every one of them. How about you? Did you grow up with older parents? Or do you know anybody who had older parents? Or what are some of the things that maybe you have encountered in this topic? So let's get a discussion going. I want to hear what you have to say. So I hope that I've given you something to think about and provoked you in a good way to consider these things. So please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. That would help me out tremendously. I'm trying to grow this channel, so I would really appreciate it. And yeah, share with a friend. Perhaps you know somebody who's thinking about these things or is facing a geriatric pregnancy, right? A pregnancy in the 30s or older. So yeah, I will talk at you later. Bye. Isn't that beautiful?